Right, and my lawyer this morning is Osei Bonsu Dixon. He's a senior corporate lawyer, and he'll tell us all about these types of contracts. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Sandra.
It's good to see you. I haven't seen you this year.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's our
year.
first encounter. Thanks so much.
Right. So this morning we're talking about contracts. Now, we know contracts are pretty basic or standard, but when it comes to the entertainment industry, the contract's different.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's different because when it comes to entertainment, it comes to the arts and the like. Then you're dealing with personal service contracts, and personal service contracts largely fester around the unique capabilities of the individual contractee.
Okay.
So his talents are the things that are in demand.
Right.
They're peculiar to him. So there's a peculiarity when it comes then to that type of contract.
Okay, so when we say personal service contract, is it different from the normal contracts that we know?
Really is not different. It's only that here, with the normal contracts, it's even assignable. You can assign your rights under those contracts. But when it comes to personal service, then it means that a particular individual, vested with particular skills, particular dispositions, is being called. So, for instance, you mentioned Agogo.
Right.
Agogo is a special individual because
Right.
he plays in a particular position. You can't just assign a contract with him, and Agogo said, I'm assigning my rights to my younger brother in the village who can play as well as I can. But in normal contracts, sometimes you can't even assign.
Okay, so what kind of specific things should appear in a personal service contract for, say, example, an actor?
A number of things. But before I even answer that question, I think it's important to even look at the role of the lawyer first.
Okay.
Yes, lawyers play a number of roles. One, the transaction itself. They must be able to have deeper understanding about the nature of the transaction going on and be able to spot errors or spot what will not be in the interest of their clients. They have also to play a role in terms of representation, so to be able to meet the other side. Because sometimes there's a balance of forces, and then there's disequilibrium, where the actor might be very talented, but is fairly new in the industry, and is in a rush to sign an agreement. Right. And so at that point, the inequities are quite patent. And
so the role of the lawyer is very important.
It's very important.
But it's the lawyer that drafts the contract, so they must make sure that all these things that you're talking about favors their client.
Not necessarily, because sometimes you find that it's somebody that is engaging the client, yes, and so they come with a standard form contract that embeds a lot of terms.
Right.
The
so
question
it's
is whether
you, the lawyer, who must amend it to suit your client's purposes.
That is your obligation. You have, that's why I said representation. And beyond that one too, you are dealing with advisory. So you should be able to advise your clients whether, for instance, the scope of the contract itself, or if it's in perpetuity. In other words, you sign a contract that has no end. Is that, if you look at a written contract, if it's written in it, then you're looking at the title to it. The title must be specific to what you are asking for. So you don't say partner agreement, you will say, for instance, ex-service agreement. Then you go to look at the date.
What does that mean?
So if it's, for instance, player transfer agreement, it must state it. It must be stated clearly. Ambiguity is not going to help. The date must be there. The parties to it, they must have contractual capacity. So you should watch to see whether who is actually contracting with who.
Whether they have the power or
whether
the authority.
They have the power. You're right. And then after doing that, you have to look at the obligations that are spelled out under the contract for the contractor and for the contractee himself.
You have to be sure that you'll be able to meet those.
You must be sure you'll be able to meet. And not only
so don't sign contracts that you know you cannot fulfill.
Absolutely. And not only about contracts that you can't fulfill. There are contracts which are even illegal at birth. Maybe lastly, I will also talk about breach. You must look at the conditions that would trigger a breach. You were, for instance, you're a lawyer, you work within the industry here, okay, the entertainment industry. You will be definitely interested in things that would trigger a breach. Would working for another organization, for instance, trigger a breach? And what is the level of performance? Perhaps there are KPIs, that is, performance indicators, to be met by your employers and by the other party. You have to look. There can be part performance, there can be non-performance, there can be malperformance. All these things will trigger different sort of reactions.
Okay, what about termination of the contract? How important is that?
It's a very mercurial aspect. Very important, very, very important. Why do I say it's important? It's important because a lot of issues that you might consider as not causing a termination provision to arise might be considered by the other parties. There's this famous 1876 case of Bettini and Jai. in which somebody was contracted to come and perform. 6 days into the contract, they did not come. But on the final day, she came to perform at the big opera. They decided to terminate. They said that, we have hired somebody else. The question was whether, she said, I performed. And in law, we have a number of, they call them conditions, warranties. I mean, these I don't want to go into. But
too technical.
They are too technical. But what I just want to say is that it's important to know what would trigger it. I'll give you a time. You have interviewed Kwakese this morning. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a very important. Kwakese has gone to prison. Now, the issue that would arise, for instance, on his would be whether
remand.
Remand. He's got remand. I mean, where he's been taken to prison anyway. Now, the point that you would be interested will be whether or not that would he was said to have used an illegal substance. Now, the point is that going to trigger a breach in terms of management services contracts that he has? Assuming
with
that
other people that he's engaged in.
That is the thing. And apart from that, so maybe he might be a sponsee. Maybe somebody sponsoring him. They use him as a brand image and all those things. But today, for instance, if you look at the kind of interview you had with him, it's even a plus somehow. He has been able to, show that something good.
He's made a good out of a bad situation.
But then the legal position for the entertainment lawyer is to be able to understand whether this would then be it will be preemptive of a termination provision. Right. That's the issue.
Right. Well, earlier on, you also mentioned something. You talked about written contracts when you're speaking. Mm. Now, a lot of times, I have friends in the industry, and I know that a lot of times, some of the contracts are oral. I mean, for an actor, for instance, the producer comes and says, "Oh, here's a script. I want you to be in this movie. I'm going to pay you so and so," and that's it. And at the end of the day, I've seen people chase producers and directors for their money. So, how important is it for a contract to be written? Is it okay? I know oral contracts are okay as well, but in this kind of industry, how important is it for a contract to be written?
I think our industry is shaping up. I mean, Gollywood, for instance, is shaping up. I'm happy about that. Now, the point is that, if you look at Act 25, the Contract Act, it does say that clearly. I mean, an oral contract is as strong as binding as a written one. But then the point is that anybody can lie under an oral contract, and then the terms might not be quite clear. So it's important that you reduce words into writing so that at least they become clear evidence of the things that we agreed on the due date. So I'll give you a typical example also. I mean, look at football, for instance. There are clauses that are embedded. These are complex contracts. They have maybe things like restraint of trade provisions. Some of them have buyout provisions. I mean, if you have an oral contract, there's a very fine line to walk between a restraint provision and then a buyout provision. So these things will not be quite clear. So you should be always veering towards a written documentation.
Okay. Still in the movie world, make-believe world, when it comes to nude scenes or sex scenes,
yes,
what kind of things can an actor put in place in the contract to best protect them?
I think that we are dealing with representation when we're dealing with films and dealing with movies. I mean, for instance, if you are going to depict Adam before he was clothed in the Bible was nude. Mm-hmm. And so you should also have in mind that it's possible that your own depiction, mm-hmm. For it to be make-believe and real, would have those kinds of elements. You are in representation. So part of it has to do with the nature of even what you're doing. But then if you think that, for instance, a particular video, a particular movie that had been cast for a particular audience or cast for a particular media has gone overboard into a different media and commercial benefits,
or is being used beyond what you contracted
very
for.
Good. Then you'll be talking about, how do you call it, some breach occurring there. But what do you put into those contracts? If you are so mindful about certain things that you will not do on set, you understand, then apart from duress into doing those kinds of things, you have to embed it in your contract that this you won't do. I was told, for instance, that Denzel Washington will not do certain scenes, and that is part of his agreement. He won't do certain scenes, and so they have to find a way of, if it's a sex scene, they have to find. He won't go beyond a certain limit. Others will go over the limit, or there will be no limits at all. Mm-hmm. So a contract is in fact a risk management tool. You have to find what burden of risk you are willing to accommodate, and what you will not do.
Mm. Yeah. Now, I know that you've spoken about a lot of key things to look out for in a contract, but can you also give us some tips on some key things to look out for to best protect yourself in a contract?
I think I can't do that in a jiffy. First, mutuality. You see, when you are making a contract with another person, there is a presumption that you are all equal. It might not be correct. And so the terms, if they are provided by the other party, I think will not necessarily cater to your interest. It will cater to theirs. So you should watch whether the contract,
balanced.
I said risk management, weigh it and see the burdens on it.
It should favor you, basically. Everybody's fighting for their interests.
But that is the point. You're right. And then you should also, I think, look at ambiguity in the contract. Some words are ambiguous. I'll give you a typical example. I mean, if you have a contract that says that we will use our best endeavors to market you. What is best endeavors?
So they must spell everything out correctly.
This is what I'm going to do. I will put a red line through it immediately. You understand? Because it means nothing. Right. If it says best international practice, that's unascertainable. So
tell us exactly what those practices are. Tell us exactly
what you do. For instance, if you're going to market for, and also use my good friend Parker, say, hey, again, maybe I'm marketing him. If you're going to market him, for instance, you better tell him clearly in the contract, you're going to spend between this amount and that amount on you within this and this time.
And this is what we're going to do.
We will use our best endeavors. The contract says clause 34. We will use our best, the producer will use his best endeavors to do to market you across the globe. That is vague, deliberate vagueness. So the KPIs will catch you, because then if he's in breach, how do you prove he's in breach?
Exactly, because he would have said, I did this and this, and this is what I meant.
And your lawyer will find it difficult.
What about the small print? A lot of times, some contracts come in some very, we overlook a lot of things. They write everything is done in very small print.
That's one dangerous one.
People overlook that. People don't read that.
People do. I mean, even lawyers don't.
Exactly.
And you have to then look at, for instance, maybe some of the exclusion clauses, things that they want to exclude out, incorporation, things that they want to incorporate. You understand that? So, at least if the contract is written in small fine print, read it. And if it makes inclusion of other subsidiary contracts, look for those contracts and also read.
Okay. Anything that we've missed?
I think that we've covered a broad stroke. I mean, the only thing that I want to say is that, I mean, if you're doing a personal service contract, think of the compensation. Think also of things like the credit, moral rights, IP rights, intellectual property rights, because you are a creator of things. You should also think about the terms. We talked about termination. Think about the termination provisions. Think of whether it is exclusive or it's non-exclusive. Whether working with one brand,
whether you're allowed to.
And then I think that finally you have to also think of the status in which you are cast within that contract, whether you are a contractor, an independent contractor, or you are an employee, because these will trigger different legal consequences.
Okay. Now, finally, how expensive is it to seek the services of a lawyer to, draft or engage in such a contract? Because I know that in this industry, a lot of people they get whatever it is, they read through it themselves and they try to understand it to the best of their ability. How expensive is it for them to contract a lawyer?
I don't think that.
Go over some of these things that we've just talked about.
I don't think that it is that expensive. I think that, for instance, the bar scale of fees specifies how much, for instance, we have to charge for certain services. So that is just, for instance, an opener into it. But beyond that one,
for the purposes of this discussion and for my friends in the industry, can you tell us exactly how much a contract, how much it costs to engage the services of a lawyer to do? It depends. So they know if they can afford it, because I know that they don't.
No, sometimes,
and it's really affecting a lot of them.
Oh, very good. Sometimes, it depends on the value itself, so that you have a little percentage of that one. And sometimes, so it can also.
Okay, so let's say that for whatever contracts that the artist or whoever is being engaged for their services for is 10,000 Ghana cedis. 10,000 Ghana. When you talk about percentage, how much as a lawyer would you take?
Different lawyers will charge differently. In fact, it's a very difficult question you're asking me. But for instance, you're dealing with an average. I mean, somebody might say that between 1,500 at the minimum for that type of contract, and then maybe 2,000 out
of the 10,000.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, but not too expensive, but quite expensive.
No, that's not too expensive. Okay. Not too expensive.
All right then. Thank you so much for your time this morning. That's all the time that we have. My lawyer this morning is Osei Bonsu Dixon. He's a senior corporate lawyer, and he was here this morning to shed some more light about personal service contracts as it relates to the entertainment or the arts industry. Thank you so much once again for your time this morning.